Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. Thanks to you for supporting the show. I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast. And today we're talking to Zach Brown. Zach's journey started when he showed up at an AA clubhouse that he knew his grandfather went to. Wasn't really sure what to expect. And it was his last resort before the liquor store. And I soon realized in the meeting that he was an alcoholic and received hope in the fact that there were others like him, and that those other men and women had recovered. Zach kept going back, which is huge. I always say that, keep coming back. He got a sponsor, he read the book, and he worked the steps. Now today, Zach's preparing to move his family to Liberia, West Africa, to be closer to his work. And him and his family are going to serve orphans there through an organization called Orphan Aid Liberia. And we're going to talk about that. I was just, Zach and I were just chatting before, and I was just saying how amazing it is and how crazy it is at the same time. So we're going to learn more about that. Before we get into Zach's story and that discussion, be sure to check us out at thatsoberguy.com for past episodes, for resources. You can also connect with us on Instagram at RealThatSoberGuy and on Twitter at Shane Raymer. I want to give a shout out to my buddy and listener of the show, Jeremy. He just celebrated 30 days of sobriety. Jeremy and I have been chatting back and forth for a couple of months now, and just really proud of him and really stoked for him to get that 30-day chip. So congrats, my brother. Good stuff coming for you ahead. Keep it up. We also have Aaron Walker back on the show next week. I'm really excited to have him back on. Aaron's a great dude. He's not in recovery, but he's got a lot of great things to answer from or to talk about from a spiritual perspective and just on life. He's got a lot of experience and he's done some really cool things. So we'll be chatting with him again next week. So be sure to check out for that or look out for that show coming up. January 20th, Shane Raymer and Mark Saratella present That Sober Guy podcast live at the Hollywood Improv with special guests Darren Prince and Brandon Novak. Pumped about that show. For tickets and more information, you can go to thatsoberguy.com/live shows. If you also, or you can also go to improv.com/Hollywood and get tickets there. Let's see what else we got here. A couple more things, and we're going to get to Zach. If you need some help, you can call Foundations Recovery Network. They have a private and confidential line. It's 877-714-1318. They have nationwide residential and outpatient facilities. We've been working with Foundations for a few years now. We go out to their conferences. We get to interact with a lot of the people at their treatment facilities as well as people inside Foundations out of Nashville. So they're great people. They really do care. And if you need some help, you have a question for you or a loved one, be sure to give those guys a call. Once again, it's 877-714-1318. And then the last thing, we just launched the How to Navigate the First 90 Days of Sobriety podcast video course. A little bit why we created this, and I put together this course with a bunch of good people who I'm friends and colleagues with, some doctors, some fellow podcasters, even my sponsor, Buddy C, got involved in it. So I was really confused out of my first 90 days when I got home from treatment. So I thought, let's put something together that can help folks navigate what that looks like, and here's some stories and here's some shares and some experience about what worked and what didn't work for other people. So if you'd like to check that out, you can do that by going to thatsoberguy.com and clicking on courses. I wear a hunting vest and Wranglers, by the way, when I first got out of rehab. I've never done that in my life. So it's kind of a funny thing. You can tell I was pretty darn confused in those first 90 days. So yeah, go there, check that out. I think that's it. That was a hell of a lot of announcements today. I'm glad those are over, and I'm really super pumped to talk to Zach Brown today. Zach, what's up, man? Coming from Cartersville, Georgia. Man, it's great to talk to you, man. We have some things in common, I think, that we're going to get into today. Great to have you on the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Shane, thank you so much for having me, man.
So you're out in Cartersville, Georgia. How often do you get how often do you have to say, no, I'm not Zach Brown from the Zach Brown Band? Let's just bring it up and just get it out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's everyday life for me, man. When I was in high school, he was just now coming up, so he was playing around the local bars around here. So everybody knew his music, but really didn't know him, knew what he looked like that much. I could actually go in a Waffle House and flash my ID card, and they would give me a free waffle, man. I swear to God.
No
So
way.
it had its advantages, but now they realize that I'm 6'5" and skinny, and he's 5'11" and a little stout.
Yeah.
I can't get the waffles anymore, but.
That's funny, man. Some waffles and chicken, man. You get the chicken on the waffles too? That's a Southern thing, right?
Yeah, it is, but that's not me. that's more like Atlanta. I think Roscoe's or something like that.
I've heard of Roscoe's, and I probably just saw it on movies or, I don't know, TV, heard someone talking about it. I've never technically had the chicken and waffles myself. Not to say that I wouldn't, but I don't know. Is it any good or?
I haven't had it personally. I hadn't been to Roscoe's. I think it's a more high dining. I haven't experienced that yet. For that high dining for rappers, I don't have that.
That's funny, man. So is real quick too. You said on the local scene for Zach Brown, the musician. Is he from Georgia too?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Yeah. He's from the. I don't know exactly, but I know he's from South Georgia. So he's very about a 1 hour radius around here somewhere.
Wow. All right. Well, country music stuff. I'm loving it. So let's. I figured we should get this out of the way too, real quick, Zach. You and I share the same sponsor, Buddy C. Buddy's been on the show. Buddy actually connected us. Two things. I think it's great how God connects people when we're open to that. I think this is a great example of that. You, myself, Buddy, all putting ourselves out there and just trying to do what God has, the next right thing lined up for us. And we end up meeting people, creating relationships, and getting to do some cool things in life. That's number one. Number two, man, Buddy's such a great dude. And I think it's really cool that, you and I both get to work with him, man. And from my understanding, you were actually his first sponsee that he started working with. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I started right when I walked into AA. Buddy was the first guy. It was my second meeting. He sat down next to me, and he knew that I was, after the meeting, he came up to me because he knew I was a newcomer, and he handed me a big book. He bought me a big book, and he handed me his card, and he said, call me if you need a drink, if you feel like you're about to drink. And I kind of stuffed his card away and ignored him because I didn't think he was that I didn't think he was that sponsor that I needed. He wasn't as hip as I was looking for, I guess.
Yeah.
I was looking for a younger guy. I'm 29, so at the time I was 23. So I was looking for someone a little younger, a little cooler, a little, somebody that I could relate to cussing wise. So I found the first guy that was like cussing over there in the corner about his. I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that guy. I need him to be my sponsor.
Yeah,
that was a disaster. And after that, that first couple of weeks with that guy, of him not responding to me, and it was just terrible. I finally saw Buddy like in a meeting, and I was just like down, and I was like, man, will you be my sponsor? And he said, yeah. And we've been off to the races ever since, man. He was the only person that should have been my sponsor in the first place. So,
yeah, it's funny, man, how that works. It almost, it almost happens. I guess the first thing I think of is by accident. And at the same time, I don't believe anything happens by accident. So, God kind of gives us what we need when we need it. How important has that sponsor, has Buddy, obviously we know Buddy, so I can't say that sponsor, but a sponsor, been for you in when you first kind of started working together in early recovery? How important, how big has that been for you in your recovery, Zach?
Oh man, that was huge. The only reason I'm still sober today is because I got a sponsor. If I would have not made that step, that's not like me. Like, I don't like reaching out to people for help and stuff like that. So it was a God thing that made me submit to someone else and actually commit to meeting up with them. And that guidance in the early stages of sobriety was key because, again, I started drinking when I was 12 years old, alcoholically. It wasn't just like, here or there. I started really drinking when I was 12. And I sobered up at 23, but as Buddy tells me all the time, I'm 12 still. Right. There was no growing in those years hardly. So I'm still a child. So anything that I think I know, it can be wiped clean because I don't know anything. So I needed his help so much from the beginning, just kind of walking me to walk me through the steps. And because even from an educational standpoint, I wasn't the smartest. And so I didn't pick up a book ever. So making me read a book, man, you were going to have to walk me through it and read word for word with me, or I wouldn't have done it. But I tell people all the time, that one book has opened up hundreds of new books for me. I literally cannot quit reading after that one book. And that's been a blessing in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's great. Like one thing leads to another. Like I was saying earlier, kind of when you open yourself up, you never know what's going to come next. And I think that's, for me, that brings a lot of excitement each day when I wake up. I used to wake up either pissed off, or some days I just remember wishing that I wouldn't wake up the next day. And once I kind of opened my heart and my mind up to some new things, man, that's completely different today, thank God. But before we move on from Buddy, and I know he hates this crap, but man, we appreciate you, man. I know for me, having a sponsor, having Buddy in my life has been a huge bonus, a huge learning experience that continues to go on, man. So I appreciate that. And I just want to throw that out there. Let's kind of jump back then, Zach. Maybe you can share a little bit what your life was like. I know you said you started at 12. Take us through some of that, what your life was like before you quit at 23.
Yeah. So I grew up, born and raised Cartersville, Georgia. Like I said, it's a small town. It's a nice town. Parents divorced when I was about 2 years old. So I entered a broken home right from the get-go. And my mom and my mom remarried quickly, and my dad remarried quickly. And they remarried very good people. My mom's still married to my stepdad, and my dad is divorced right now for the third time. But growing up, my childhood wasn't nothing to like frown at. People, definitely a lot of people had it worse off than I did. But come 12 years old, I just got in a crowd. I had some new friends come to town that moved from out of town and lived in my neighborhood. I went to go play some, football in the front yard. We realized we liked the same football team. And we just started hanging out more often. And that led to me spending the night at their house. Their parents were a little more lenient. They, were breaking out the Budweisers and the drinking and kind of partying in the backyard, and let the kids do, whatever they like, really. I mean, I got handed my first beer at the age of 12, and I fell in love. I remember I drank 2 Budweisers, and I was inside of the house. And the next thing I teleported outside into the pool, and I wake up, I'm in the pool. And I was like, even that night I threw up. I remember throwing up in my Birkenstocks at the end of that night, back when Birkenstocks were a thing. And I woke up, head pounding, body aching, but I was like, I want to do that again. That was awesome. So from the get-go, I love drinking, man. And from that moment on, I dedicated my rest of my adolescence of trying to figure out how I could drink more.
Yeah.
And what was that next week, and how am I going to plan to get enough money for booze, enough money to last me for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whatever that is. And back when I was drinking heavy, we couldn't buy alcohol on Sundays, so you had to get up enough money Saturday night to last you till Sunday. So, yeah. Man, all these things that a 14 to 15-year-old should not be thinking about.
Yeah.
I was wrapped up in and obsessed with, and it stinks looking back at it, the wasted years. But again, you hear the old cliche, you got to go through it to get to it, and I think that was just part of my story.
Yeah, that's good, man. It's funny too how many stories I've heard. We used to we're calling the red and whites out here, the Budweisers. Oh, you're drinking the red and whites, man. Man, how many headache stories I've heard from the red and whites. You know what I mean? The classic Budweiser, man. That's like the headache of all beers for some reason, I think, especially at 13 or 14, probably.
Natural ice and Four Locos they take the cake on headaches.
Yeah.
I've had some rough headaches on Four Locos, but that was the ending. I was drinking a lot of Four Locos because they just got me drunker a lot quicker for some reason, and I would just hammer those when my wife was at work. And
they're cheap too. They were like 99 cents, I think. Yeah.
And then I hear like people from colleges are dying off of them because they're mixing too many of them.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it was years ago, but I don't know if that's the case. But I heard campuses where they would just mix like too many at one time and just get toasted, man. And some of them wouldn't wake up from their drunk.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, well, you said that everything was pretty normal and pretty good for the most part growing up. So are you kind of saying that you really just love the feeling of just being able to kind of escape and just be high and feel that feeling of release when the first time you drank? There wasn't really necessarily anything that you were trying to run from. It was just more or less like, damn, this feels great, and I just kind of going to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, man, Shane, I really believe in this thing as a disease, and what the book says, it's that allergic reaction that takes place. And I just think it took place in me. And it wasn't really nothing that my situation was worth drinking over. Cause like I said, my dad was, at that point, he was a decent dad. Today, that's not the point. Addiction has fully took a hold of him. But at the time growing up, he was fine. And my mother was fine. And I was, athletic, and I had friends, and I just had all this stuff. But yeah, you're right on, man. It was just the feeling, man. That feeling that I think some people, personality types, I've been reading a lot on personality types recently, and I just think mine is so specific where no wonder I drank, because I couldn't fully feel like I was myself unless I drank, because I just wasn't open, and like I could dive into a whole nother realm of the world, and it was just a cool experience. And that was it, until it wasn't cool anymore, obviously. And then when you actually grow out of that and you grow into the real world of DUIs and jail cells and stuff like that, and testing out other, drugs, once it skips to that level, then you start being more concerned. And but yeah, I think it was just simply, I love to party, man, and I love to drink, but I just love the feeling.
You mentioned too, we just mentioned your dad, and then also in the intro, when in your bio, you mentioned your grandfather. So it obviously has played a role within your family, like many of us out there. I'm in the same boat. Definitely played a role in my family, and I think a lot of other people listening can probably share that same similarity. What are your thoughts on that? Like, have you looked a lot into that? Do you have any certain, opinions or thoughts on the disease aspect, and how that's kind of, you woke up one day and you ended up getting drunk that day, and you like the feeling, but really there is some more to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My grandfather, he's 26 this year. He'll be 26 years sober. And my father's an alcoholic. My mother's father died of cirrhosis of the liver about 15 years ago. So it's and my mother is, her drug of choice is pain pills. So it's within the family, and I haven't done the scientific research myself. It's one of those things, once I recovered, that side of it really didn't interest me. Now that I have kids, it kind of interests me,
me too.
because man, I'm scared to death that I might pass that trait along to them. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's the one day at a time. I try not to worry too much about the future, about tomorrow. And because if I do, I'll let my mind run rabbit and just create illusions of fear. And so right now, I hadn't dug too far deep into that.
I think one of the things that we got going for us, though, like with regard to the kids, man, is that kids, and I'm continuing to learn this too. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I know you have three boys, right?
3 boys, yep.
3 boys. So I'm noticing that kids, they react and they learn so much more from watching rather than being told. And so the one thing I know I'm so proud of is like, and I've thought about that, what you're saying, like, man, I don't want to pass that down to them, and that's something that's kind of out of my control. But what I am proud of is the fact that they're never going to see me drink. They're never going to see me, growing up in the environment that I grew up in watching, you know what I mean? And so maybe at least in that aspect, I think it gives me a little bit of relief and a little bit of hope that, and they're human beings. They're their own people. They're going to do whatever they want to do, right, at the end of the day. But it does give me a little sense of peace in knowing that, man, they don't ever have to see that,
Yeah, no, definitely the opportunities were a lot more close to home with my father. He would allow me to drink if I stayed home on the weekends, and having that kind of guidance, even though he really didn't think he was doing anything that wrong. And it didn't really look like that, having a couple beers as a teenager or something like that on the weekend with your dad. It doesn't look that wrong because everyone else around you is doing it, right? Like all your friends are drinking on the weekends. But when I reached the point where actually I was drinking on the weekdays, and as a high schooler, by myself in my room with a little bottle of whiskey, like just to get that feeling for that night, I knew that something was up. But again, you're right. Like that whole just your kids are watching your every move. You know, I realize that more and more every day. I know yours are older. My oldest are twins that are 3, and still I can, you know, if I say something or something slips and they repeat it, I'm like, I had no idea you were even listening to me. Like I'm trying to have a personal conversation with my wife, and they're listening the whole time, and I'm like, wow. I was like, you know, that is important, man. Like, yeah, and I agree. Like they won't ever see me. I hope by the grace of God, they'll never see me drinking. All they'll see is hopefully a lot better example than what I had growing up.
Yeah, totally, man. It's funny. I just was reminded of something too. And this actually just happened last night. We were watching a movie, and this incident actually happened, gosh, probably like 6 or 7 months ago. And my son brought it up last night out of anything. And what happened was we were riding bikes. There's a little town square right by our house, and you know, him and I will go over there and we'll cruise around. He's got a little BMX bike, and he's got his his helmet and stuff, and he's going down this hill. And I happened to just film it on this one. And I said, I'm going to film it. So I film it, and he's going down this little hill. And as he's about halfway down, he goes, Dad, I'm going to do it without looking. And I'm like, okay. And it kind of didn't register, right? So I'm filming him, and I'm like rolling. And I notice at like the last second that he's like got his head looking this way. He's not watching where he's going, right? And he goes head on into this rock, this big old rock, right? Flying over the handlebars, right down on his face. You know, luckily he had the face mask helmet on. And on the video, I said, "Oh shit!" And I screamed it because I was like, "Oh my God! Like what just happened?" You know, I ran over there. And so last night we're sitting there, and he goes, "Oh shit!" And I said, "What'd you just say, bud?" And he goes, well, remember you said it when I crashed. And I went, wow, this dude remembered that from 7 months ago. You know what I'm saying? So that just kind of came up from just maybe remember that in that thing. But yeah, dude, they're sponges, and they soak everything up. So, well, dude, so back to you now, of course. So you're going through high school, you're drinking a lot, you're kind of doing your thing, I guess, and monkey see, monkey do, doing that kind of stuff. When you get to, the tail end, maybe that last year, what was that like? And then what was the final moment that brought you back and where you said like, man, I can't do this anymore. I got to get some help.
Yeah. Yeah. So in high school, going through high school, I continued to drink. And so I finally ended up graduating by the grace of God. So I didn't have any college, through high school, the athletic I talked about faded away because I didn't want to show up for practice. I wanted to go to hang out with girls or do this or that. So all that was irrelevant anymore. Any hopes I had for college scholarships were gone. So once I graduated, I obviously just wanted to go into the working field and make money to drink. I did. For a year, I went in. I got my first DUI right out of high school, lost my license, and then the real world hit right there. I'm like, man, but you think like something like that extreme would, I didn't even fight it. I got pulled over by a cop. I almost wanted to. I look back at it, I wanted to get arrested. Like I wanted to be that. I wanted that kind of street cred, if you will. And it's a stupid thing to want, but for some reason I wanted to get arrested. So I was excited, actually, after I got arrested. I wasn't too excited when I lost my license for a year. But again, when you drink, like, what does that matter? Like, you go driving if you want to. Like, you're really not – you don't care. So I had that year of just making money randomly and enough to drink on and party with through that year. And ended up getting arrested again for drinking, underage drinking. And I remember the judge called me. Like a small town again, right? 3 days after I was arrested, I was let out, and I went to bar that night. It was like St. Patrick's Day, or somewhere around St. Patrick's Day. And he called me. He heard you got arrested again. And I said, yes, sir. I'm sorry. I was just drinking with some buddies. I shouldn't have been in there. It's not going to happen again. I apologize. And he said, well, come on into the courthouse later on. I want to talk to you for a little bit. So I did. I went in. And he said, well, I'm going to give you 30 days in jail for probation violation. And I'm like, 30 days in jail? I was like, isn't that for like adults? He's like, well, you're 19, son. I was like, golly. I was like, I don't think I want, that kind of. So I had to check into jail that night, and man, you talking about humiliating, man, when that check-in process of actually checking you into jail to stay, man, it's one of the darkest moments I've ever had. Just stripping you completely naked, putting the delicing, stuff on you to make sure you're deliced, all your hair is deliced, and making you bend over and cough, make sure you're not bringing anything up your anal. And I'm like, man, this is as rough as it gets right here, like humiliating wise. I mean, when I'm drinking, I'm up here, I'm on cloud nine, I'm the man. This is far away from that feeling as I've ever been. And especially when I walked in that jail cell with 20 other people in my pod, and those doors just poosh, and they closed. I was like, wow. So that hit that metal bed and grab that little scratchy blanket and just kind of pushed my head underneath it. And I tried my best to hold back tears so anybody wouldn't see me cry, but man, I was hurting inside. Because I did not want to be in this situation. I knew I had so much, growing up, like between athletics and friends and just, good mom and stuff like that. I was like, why did I have to throw it away? How did I end up here? And my friends are in college right now, and I'm sitting in a jail cell. Yeah. And that was a reality hit.
How old were you? You were 23 at that time, or 22?
No. I'm only 19 at this point. This is okay. I'm only 19 at this point. And so the 30 days go by, and in that 30 days, I'm reading the Bible, right? Just like any good convict would, right? You in jail, you got to read the Bible because you're a changed man. So I'm flipping through, Genesis, and I'm like, oh yes, this God is speaking to me, and I'm going to change my life, Lord. And they called me on like a couple of days early. They said, Brown, come down here. And they start checking me, and I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, well, you're going to go today. I'm like, well, it's a little early, isn't it? Like, well, you get early release as long as you're in good behavior. And they're like, do you have a ride? I was like, absolutely. And I didn't have a ride, but I knew my buddy lived a mile away. And as soon as those doors hit, I ran to my buddy's house. Yeah. And I left that Bible right behind, man. I cranked open his refrigerator, grabbed that first beer, and just it was off to the races right then. And it went shortly after, and more jail time. And I mean, I can romanticize, what happened between.
Hey Zach, I'm getting a bad connection with you real quick. Hold on one sec, man. Let me all right, let me see if it's back up real quick here. Yeah, I got a couple dropouts there from you. Just a second. Okay, so it kind of jumped out where you said that the doors open and you ran over to your buddy's house, and first thing you did was kind of crack a beer. So pick up from right there.
Yeah. So I ran to my buddy's house, and the first thing I did was open his fridge and grab a beer. And he was in the shower, and he's like, "Who is it?" And I was like, "It's Zach." He's like, "Oh, you're out?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, there's a beer in the fridge." And I said, "All right, got it." And it was off of the race. I was at the bar that night. Actually saw some of the jailers in the bar who were off duty having a drink, and they literally was like, "Didn't we just see you last week in jail?" And so that's, again, small town. And so, man, I can romanticize, I guess. I went on to have two more arrests, two more DUIs. I love drinking. I love getting behind the wheel, and that's a bad combination, I know. And I thank God that I haven't took my own life or anyone else's in that process, because I know those horror stories. I have friends that are a part of those horror stories. And it just was a constant revolving door from between that last arrest to my final bottom of me submitting and saying no. It was just drink while your wife's at work, because I started an online business, and so I worked from home for the most part. So I was able to drink all day as soon as she left, and then hide the real alcohol, the little bottles of rum, airplane bottles of rum that I was drinking, and the Four Locos. And and when she got home, I'd crack open a Yingling, a nice Yingling, like I just am having my first beer from a long day of work. Like, the stuff that I thought about to try to do to hide my alcoholism was ridiculous.
That's funny.
But yeah, I when I was I remember I went out, my wife, thank God she stuck with me through all this, because I met her I met her in middle school. We dated in middle school, actually, and then we went to different high schools. And I met her at a party the day after her graduation, and that was when I was right around 19. I didn't have a license at the time, and she was my girlfriend, and she went to college up to DC. I tried to go to college at some literally a dry county in Cleveland, Georgia, and that didn't work out. And but she stuck with me through all this, and she's been my rock for sure. Because I don't know, as you're drinking, you don't want to hang out with good people, and she was one of those good people, because I just felt bad. I just felt like a miserable person. I don't deserve to, be with you. I don't deserve to be hanging out with you in this state. So I'm going to leave you on the weekends or wherever that was. And I made a lot of excuses and a lot of plans with people on the weekends, and left her, home alone or doing something with her family. And they're making plans, and I'm making other plans because their plans don't align with my plans as an alcoholic. And so it finally, to get to, kind of the bottom of it, I was going to out with another night. It was just like a Thursday night, it was a Saturday night. And me and my buddies went out to a bar in Atlanta and stayed up all night drinking. I got home around 3 a.m., had to crawl through the window because I couldn't find my keys. Woke up that Sunday morning, reaching over to see if my wife was in bed. She wasn't. My girlfriend at the time, she wasn't. And, I had several missed phone calls from her. So she called me back again. It was like 11 o'clock. I'm still hungover, and she's just crying. And I'm like, what are you crying about? She's like, I'm just exhausted. She's like, I can't, I don't know what to do with you anymore. She's like, you just miss my wife was at the time, her and her family, she was, I don't know if you know CrossFit Games or CrossFit. My wife, her sister and 5 others, they won the CrossFit. They've been to the CrossFit Games 3 times, and they got third place one year. So it was awesome. In the middle of that season. So it was very important to her. Yeah. And I'm usually always there to support her. And I missed that open workout that she had that morning. And what doesn't seem like a big deal was a big deal for her. And I missed several of these things in the past, and it just keeps loading up on her. And finally she just had enough. And at the same time, I was looking for something to say to her, and I didn't have anything else. I was at that point where I was just emotionally drained. I could not lie one more time, nor did I want to. At that moment, I did not want to lie anymore. I didn't want to be that person anymore. And so when she got home, I openly, said, I think I have a drinking problem. And as weird, as obvious as that is, that's a big deal for an alcoholic, right? When you say it out loud, especially to someone you love, no matter what, everyone probably knows that you have a problem. But when you say it verbally, out loud, that's a whole nother level of there's
a lot of power in it.
It's so much power, man, because in anything. And that's why I believe in the whole, step forward and doing that inventory and getting whatever's on your mind out there. Because you let it boil up here, then it just continues to create chaos. And getting it out there, I really regretted it at first, because I was like, now, I know I'm going to regret it in a couple of days when I sober up and I want to drink again. And I did. I wanted to drink again. But that relationship with her, and her knowing that I was an alcoholic and knowing I really wanted help deep down, she stuck with me, and she created distractions for me. She took me out to do things and just random things, and just to make it unique and to change the scene up for me. Because I didn't know what exactly it was that I was looking for. I really didn't know about AA. I knew my grandfather was in something, but I didn't know what that was. And I knew he was sober. I knew he was clean. I knew he had a past. But I really did. I thought whatever he was into was for 70-plus-year-old men, and that was it. I had no idea it was open for me.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of white knuckling in the beginning. About the first 30 days was white knuckling for me. And I remember reaching a point where her father, my father-in-law, who was a huge mentor for me, just not an alcoholic, nor does he know really what the alcohol is until now. Yeah. He told her, she came home to me and she said, my dad said not to worry, you'll be able to drink again. And man, that window of opportunity was like,
Wow.
If I don't do something right now, I'm going to drink. Because that was the opportunity I've been waiting on for 30 days.
Yeah.
Like, if I do not call myself out again, like I did verbally, to someone else, obviously, that needs to understand this more, that can understand this fully, then I am going to be in trouble.
Well, and that for him was probably coming from a place of love, of just trying to support you, right? Letting you know, hey, it's going to be okay. Not understanding the full scope of like what alcoholism is and how deep it really dwells within, you know, someone's spirit or heart or mind or whatever. So in other words, you're like, oh man, like, great. Somebody just approved of me going. So like, that's kind of what you're saying, right? Like, Dave, I got to check myself real quick here.
I got to get someone. So that's when I said, I was going to the point where, okay, well, let's just go drink. And
yeah,
I went to go to the liquor store, and I was like, man, I got to get this one more try. I got to call myself out again, because something's telling me that this is like, whatever happened the past 30 days has not changed. Like, I'm still going to just pick up right back where I left off. And so I pulled into that clubhouse that I picked up $20 from my $20 from my grandfather from many times, that parking lot. I pulled in that parking lot instead of waiting in the car and for him to give me $20 to go on. I got out of the car.
Oh, wow.
And went to that 12 o'clock meeting. And I sat in the back, and they got a church pew in the back, and the rest, they have like tables around. And I sat in the back away from everyone, because I wasn't fully sure. I didn't want them to rub off on anything on me. And
yeah,
man, I looked, they said, you know, in the beginning, they kind of made a note, or they made an announcement that said, if this is anyone's first meeting, and if you don't mind, do you please just feel like introducing yourself by your first name? And I said, hey, I'm Zach. I'm new here. I'm just here to listen. And that triggered them to do a first step meeting for the newcomer. And they went around the table, man, and there were men there, there were women there. They were fat, they were skinny, they were black, they were white, they were young, they were old, and they all told a little bit of my story that day. And when I got all the way around, I knew that I was an alcoholic for sure. And I knew that I had a problem, and I did not have the solution, but the solution, I've never felt so much hope than I did in that meeting right there. And that's what brought me back for my second meeting. And that's what introduced me to Buddy. And that's what introduced me to this whole walk. And man, I'm one of those who, thank God, I'm all in or nothing, because I had to be all into this thing. I can't just teeter around it and test it out for 90 days, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I have to, like, you have to change me quickly, or something's gonna happen. So I was begging Buddy to let's jump into this thing, let's do it, take me through the steps, you know. And I wanted to go through all 12 in one day, but we had to drag that out a little bit for my own reasons. And but now, you know, I work the steps often. I meet with Buddy still after almost, you know, I sobered up March 10th, 2013. So this coming March will be 6 years. So I've been with Buddy over 5.5 years. And I've had sponsees myself. And man, it's just this whole walk of life. Like, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And I try to explain to people all the time that because a lot of people, my friends, they see the change, the dramatic change, and they message me all the time wanting to know what it was. And some of them aren't alcoholics, you know. Some of them just got tough knocks in life, and they think that I have some kind of answer for them. In reality, like, it's just God worked through me, through AA for me. Like that doesn't mean it has to be your story. God will just listen to God. That's point A. Make some time for God, and then he'll lead you wherever you need. He thank God he led me to AA, because he knew that my submission was the only way that I was going to be able to come out of that.
So let's dive into that a little bit, actually, because I feel like you have something really, really powerful to offer in your own experience with two words, with acceptance and then surrender. I know those are two huge things, and I get a lot of emails about this, about just kind of like you said, well, you know, what should I do, or what can I do? Well, I don't have all the answers. You know what I mean? You don't have all the answers. The answer comes from within. But I feel like, and I know from my own experience, that acceptance and surrender were two of the biggest things, especially early on. So I'm just kind of curious what your take on those two things are.
Yeah, no, I always thought I had to change. I had to take action to change stuff.
Yeah.
And that was where I was messing up, because the more I took action to change stuff, the more I put my own will into stuff, and the more things swirled out of control. Because in the past, since I was 12, I was doing things the entirely wrong way.
Yeah.
And then when I sobered up, I continued to want to do those things the wrong way as a sober person, but it was causing more chaos and stress. So I had to, that serenity prayer in the beginning was so crucial to me. When I didn't know how to pray, I used that.
Yeah.
And I literally said that every day. And that's, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just pray for wisdom if you don't know anything else, because you might not know the difference right now, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But just pray for wisdom. And if it's not meant for you to take a move, or if it wasn't meant for me to make a move at that moment, I would walk away from it. And that was something I'm never used to doing, is just walking away from a situation when I thought that my whatever would change it for the better. Some things are just better to left as they are. I had to learn that with my father. I had to learn that with my mother, is I'm not going to change these people. I can be there for them when they're ready. But the best thing I can do is continue to spiritually feed myself. And so I'm prepared when they're ready.
Yeah.
So, but no, acceptance and surrender. They're probably the two biggest words that pop out in my recovery, for sure.
Yeah. I'm loving the relationship aspect of that too, regardless of who it is. Is it, for me, friends, family, my father, other people that I know, we want the best for those people. We love those people. Like we know through our own experience that change is possible, through God, through a program, through working with other people, community, all that stuff. And it's like, we want to give that to them. We want to show them somebody, but at the same time, it's not my job to do that. And I can't force something on them until at all. But like you said, they have to be ready for that. And so I love that you said, like, my job is to be as spiritually fit and ready for when they are ready. And I think just in you saying that, even it kind of triggered something to me, to give me a little bit of peace for those people out there that are still out there struggling and going through it. God's got his own plan for those people, but my job is to continue on to do the best I can do for myself and be ready for them, dude. So thank you for saying that, man. That's really, really cool stuff right there. And it does give me a little peace, and hopefully someone else out there listening who might be, have a family member or a friend who's struggling and they want to help, but they're just unhelpable at this time.
Yeah.
Zach, so you end up going into the program. Let's fast forward now and we'll hit these two parts, kind of back to back. One, what is life like today? What's your recovery program look like? And then, man, let's talk about the work that you're about to do. You're taking your family all the way out to Liberia to work in an orphanage, which is just amazing and crazy at the same time. So let's touch on both of those, but let's start with where your recovery's at today and what that kind of looks like.
Yeah. So when I sobered up, I actually, after a year, I started thinking a little clearly, and I was like, why haven't I proposed to this beautiful woman that's decided to stuck with me yet? So first I proposed to my wife, and it wasn't long after that we had twins. And then wasn't long after that, we had another boy. And so all these changes are happening in my recovery process. And if that it's tough to do anything with children.
Yes.
I mean, I remember it was a Sunday afternoon, and my wife was laying on the bed, and she was pregnant. She was 7 months pregnant. I was just sitting there talking to her, and I was like, man, I cannot wait until I'm never bored again. Because I was just bored at that moment. I didn't have anything to do, and I regret those words. I eat those words every day, because now like every second is accounted for in my life.
Yeah.
So recovery for me now, I got into it early. Buddy threw me into service work. So it was little things like making the coffee, and showing up to this many meetings at my noon spot, my home group, becoming a home group member, because if you're not a member of a home group, you're homeless. That's what we say at our group.
I like that.
So
yeah.
I had to be a member, and that just gives you, again, like, how I said to my wife, I'm an alcoholic. I made that claim, and making my home group, just making a claim saying, okay, this is my home group. I have to keep it clean, with these people.
Yeah.
So it brought me another part of unity that I needed. I became a GSR shortly after that for the home group. So go to the GSR meetings, and I don't know if, you know, a lot of AA lingo is people relate to it, but GSR is just a general service representative. You know, the AA is kind of like flipped upside down, the pyramid upside down, right? The more power you have, the less you have, or the more you think, more authority you think you have, the less you have. So it's all about service in AA. So I just jumped in and just was willing and available for younger kids that came in. Were kind of drawn to me just because there's not many young people in this in the program at all. Once they come in, they you know, spill their guts, and then they walk out and they never come back. And, but
it's like a free therapy session, real quick.
Yeah, I did it too. I did.
I think it was Dave from the Dopey podcast. He made a post on Instagram the other day, and it said something about someone please slap me if someone else shares for another hour long in a meeting. And I'm like, gosh, amen to that. Like, you know, but hey, it's part of it though. And so I think there's an example there. It helps me practice my patience, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So I jumped into service work early on, and I still do that. So I go to meetings about 3 times a week in my hometown, along with doing, you know, listen to podcasts, and I read the book often. I had to stay in that book, and as a reminder, just as it led me to the Bible in the first place. I got to continue to read it, so I'll know it, and so I can pass it on to the next person.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a day-to-day process for me is I knew I had to be. We talked about this earlier. Being spiritually fit doesn't necessarily mean being the best, well-known at AA, right? You don't have to know the point of being spiritually fit for me isn't knowing the big book backwards and forward. It's actually knowing my higher power is growing that, nurturing that relationship often, every day, every second, honestly, is why I'm here, to nurture that relationship with God. So when you have kids, it was a struggle for me to kind of find that between work and between being a dad, and between just regular everyday stuff and going to AA meetings. Like, how do you spiritually feed yourself in this situation? So I ended up having to start waking up, and I hated waking up. I started waking up at 5 a.m. Because it was the only time that my kids were asleep, and they usually wake up around 6:30 or 7. So I had an hour dedicated to feeding myself spiritually. And man, when I made that change, that was such a game changer for me, man. We're all morning people. I don't care who says they're not a morning person. Like this, biblically, if you're into the Bible, like God shows many times at morning times where it's at. Like, and it only took me a week to adjust to getting up. Now I just can't wait to get up. I call it coffee with Jesus. And I get up. I have my coffee's already beeper. I have it set. It's ready to roll. I light a candle. I'm sitting in the dark in this little solitude, and I just pretend I'm a monk for an hour, man. And I just that feeds me up, and that makes me a better person. So I have to have that. But along with that, man, I just have to be open and willing. I got to keep my head up. I can't be scrolling through social media all day, just judging people and stuff like that. I got to be open to what's around me so I can help people. And that's the biggest part of my program.
Yeah, that's good, man. I love that morning time. And it's funny when I don't get it, if I wake up late, which happens sometimes, and the kids get up shortly after, dang it, I missed the window right there. I need to get, and it can really set my day on a whole different direction versus when I'm up for that hour beforehand and I got some time to have some coffee, read a little bit, just kind of get mentally prepared for the day. I mean, you said it best, like being a father, being a husband, you know, being the worker guy that we got to be, where I always equate it to, we're having to wear a lot of different hats, and we got to switch that hat. Like, man, now I got to come through the door after a long day and I got to put my dad hat on. And sometimes it's really difficult to transition, into that. But, you know, that's comes with practice, I think, like anything. And I'm trying to get a little better at it each day, you know, and I sure as heck would not be able to do it if I was still drinking. So that's a good thing there.
No. I think about that all the time, man. Like, being a father is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I could not imagine doing it as an active alcoholic.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind how people can do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I could barely do it with doing it sober. Spiritually fit.
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone in that. I just told my wife actually last night too, after the little incident with Cash that I mentioned earlier. I said, man, when people told me that being a parent is the hardest job you'll ever have, they were damn straight on point right there, because and it's funny because it's the most rewarding and I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And at the same time, it's the most beautiful thing and the most challenging thing at the same time. Like my patients are constantly tested, and I'm constantly having to learn how to get better at that. It's a trip, man.
Yeah. It's exhaustingly fun. I call it exhaustingly fun.
Let's jump into this Liberia mission that you and your whole family are going on, bro. This is it's amazing. I've said it like 3 times already. It's amazing and it's crazy at the same time. I think you even said that yourself. Start by telling us a little bit about it and how it came up, and then where people can go to find more information about it, and we'll put those links in the show notes here, and how they can help you guys too.
Yeah. No. So I mentioned earlier that I started an online fitness gear and apparel business about 7 years ago now. And as I was going through recovery and trying to manage this online business, I was finding out how unsuccessful it really was. And I put a Band-Aid on it long enough, but God, there is nothing impossible for him. I was, praying for something. I was like, God, I don't know what it is that you want out of this or what I'm supposed to do, but I'm right now, I feel like a failure and I don't know what to do. And it wasn't long into my recovery that a fitness equipment manufacturer in Atlanta approached me and wanted to buy my online store, because what they did is they created the barbells, the weights, the kettlebells, the physical side of things, and they wanted to complement it with my fitness gear and apparel, the weight belts, the accessories. And I built up a huge following on Facebook, and I had the online, the beautiful website and the bells and whistles, and they wanted just to buy that. So I was like, okay. And they offered me more than I could ever imagine for it. And they hired me on as well to be the online marketer and all that. So with the acquisition, I got a job.
Wow, that's amazing, bro.
Yeah. So I'm getting in this job, and I'm doing the merger. I'm kind of marketing online for them. I'm kind of adjusting to them. And I shortly realized that, being not the owner anymore, that I don't have much say so in anything anymore. Yeah. So I kind of got dried out really quick. They didn't have the same vision as I did. They really weren't motivated. They had other side jobs, and they just had a lot of money to throw at something at the time, I guess. And so I was starting to burn out there. I had just had my twin boys. They had some health issues early on. So they had 6 weeks in the NICU in the hospital. And they thankfully came out of that fine. But after that, during this process, I'm dealing with hospital bills. I'm dealing with this job that I do not like. I feel like I'm just taking up time on this earth for no reason. And a buddy of mine, Daryl Roberts, who's the founder of Orphan Aid Liberia, I worked out with him at a gym, and so he knew I was in the digital media business. And he said, hey, will you give me some, can I take you to some coffee someday? Can you give me some pointers on how to, help my Facebook a little bit? So I went to coffee with him, and, he wasn't doing anything online. And I was just suddenly, immediately, oh yeah, I'll help you, man. I want to do this. This is cool. I fell in love with it. And, I said, what you need though is content is king around here. You got to have pictures. You got to have, you're serving this many children in Liberia, and you don't have many like high resolution pictures of them. And he's like, well, I don't have a camera. He's just one of those guys that said yes to God and just used the crap out of them. And
that's cool.
He said, I have a trip coming up. Would you like to come with me? And I was like, yeah, but I have a job and I have newly twin boys, so I doubt that's going to happen. And so I came home to my wife and I said, Daryl wants me to go on this trip with him. And she's like, that sounds like a great opportunity. Why don't you go, honey? I'm like, okay, wow. All right. So I went to my job and I said, to my bosses, I was like, hey, is there any way I can go on this trip? And they said, well, how many days is it? I was like, well, it's a 13-day trip. And like, well, you have 2 weeks of vacation. Take them how you wish. And I was like, I was like, all right. So it all added up that maybe I should jump on this trip. I was looking for a change of scenery and to kind of be revamped anyway. And boy, did I get it. I went over there, and I've never been, I tell people all the time that I've been to 2 places, Alabama and Liberia now. So I haven't been to many places in my life, both a third world. But but I got over there, and we pull up to the orphanage, and we get out of the car, and these kids are lined up on the dirt road. There's like 50 on one side and 50 on the other side of this dirt road. And we stop and we get out of the car, and what they do, they want us to walk through them, and they're celebrating that you're there, and they're dancing and they're clapping, and they're just all in tattered clothes, and they're just standing there, and they're so happy though, and they're just so excited to see you. And I mean, I've never felt such pure just joy, just excited to be where I was in that moment. It was a humbling experience to me to see that these people, like, I knew it existed. I knew poverty existed like this, but I was just so pulled away from it. I really didn't know the actual extent to it. So I spent that trip taking pictures, and I've never took such beautiful pictures, not because I was an awesome photographer at that time. It's because these children are just naturally beautiful, and you don't have to do much to them to make them. You're like, that's it. You just take pictures of them. That's as real as it gets right there. And I fell in love with working and doing it. Yeah. And I pulled Daryl aside. I said, Daryl, I think this is what I want to do. And I said, I don't know if it was for you or for someone else, but this feels good right here. And I feel like I'm using my skill set as an assignment, and for the greater glory of God. And he said, wow, man. He said, that's deep. I said, I'm glad you feel that way. He said, that's awesome. I got back, and obviously, I go home, and I have all these thoughts pouring through my head. But A, I got a job at home, and B, I got family. I have to stay where I'm at. I don't. Yeah. But I remember it wasn't short. It was a couple months after I got home from that trip, and I'm trying to, get back to the ordinary. Everything's starting to take over. Liberia is kind of in the distance in my back of my head. I'm moved on to bills are starting to pile up again, and back to work duties and projects and stuff. And I remember I get a phone call from my boss on a Friday, and I usually work from home on Mondays and Fridays. And he said, will you come in today? And I said, yeah, sure. So I drive an hour and a half to my work, and I sit down with these guys, and they said, well, we just want you to know that we sold the business, and your job is eliminated. Wow. And along with everyone else's. And we did, it was inside. I could see it coming. I just didn't know it was going to happen so quickly. Yeah. So I'm leaving that parking lot, and all I can think about is all the doubt and the fears, and the program was like, I didn't think about the program at all, or God, or all that positive stuff in that moment. And then I did. And then it hit me. I'm like, what the heck are you why so little faith? Have you not seen all I have done? I mean, that's what I heard. From God, have you not seen what I have done? What are you worried about? What are you worried about? Mm-hmm. And I got home, and I told my wife, and she was upset as well. She's like, this is just, crazy. Why would they do this to you? And I said, I don't know what God's doing, but we're just we got to have trust here. He's got us this far, man. He's did it beautifully. He's done so much for us. And man, it wasn't a week later, Daryl, the founder of Orphan Aid Liberia, called me. He said, I heard that, what happened. I've been meaning to God's been pushing me to make a leap of faith, and hiring my first full-time employee, and I want you to be it. Will you come work for me? And I was like, wow. And I said, absolutely, yes. And so that happened. I didn't miss one paycheck. And I jumped on with Orphan Aid Liberia, and we started going at it ever since. And I've been to Liberia, West Africa for past 2 years. I've been working for the organization. I've been there 7 times. And what Orphan Aid Liberia does is, Daryl got called over there 10 years ago on a mission trip, and he just felt called to do more because of the war, because of the Ebola outbreak. The country is, I think, currently the 8th poorest country in the world. At the time, it was the 3rd poorest country in the world. Just deplorable conditions. Yeah. Bad stuff over there. And the kids, it just created, over 300,000 orphans. And Liberia is, as a country, it's about the size of Tennessee. So it's not a huge country, but there's a lot of people in there. And so there's a lot of poverty. And so what Daryl did was start with one orphanage, and he helped those 70 kids. And 10 years later, now today we feed over 1,035 children daily. We educate. We have over 500 children in school, some of whom have graduated college and are working at the very orphanage that they were founded by.
Wow.
And we deworm, which is a part of our medication initiative, over 13,000 children across the country annually. And along with other projects, like we build wells where needed, dormitories, the list goes on. There's so much. We actually have chicken farms too. We put 100 chickens on orphanages. So we're teaching these kids the agriculture side of things, how they can actually be farmers, as well as provide protein for themselves. So we're doing all these cool new initiatives this year. And, my second trip, actually, I went over there. It was my first trip that I was full-time for Orphan Aid Liberia. So it was my first legit trip, and I was over there, and we were assessing new orphanages that maybe we could bring on if their needs were grave. And I remember on our fourth day, we went to this orphanage that we'd never been to before. And as we pull up, it's the same, it's the same thing. People come up to you, the kids come up to you, they're singing, they're laughing, they're having fun. Yeah. And, but that time I was a little, the first trip I was running on a lot of adrenaline. This trip was a little more I was a little more tired. I wasn't around a lot of people because the first trip was a team trip of 8 people. This time it was just me and Daryl. So I had a lot more quiet time. And, when you have a lot of quiet time, you start thinking a lot. I started missing my kids a lot. And I remember going up to that orphanage, and this little kid came up to me, and he's no more than 2 years old. And he, kind of just reached his hands up as wanted me to pick him up. And I never had that. Usually a kid that young sees a white man and they're scared because they haven't seen him that much when they're that deep in the bush. But he wanted me to hold him, and I wanted to hold him badly because I wanted to feel that kind of childlike feeling again, like my children. And man, it was such a powerful experience for me to hold that kid. And we have so when I got back, I had software for Orphan Aid Liberia that we just now launched, that you can dedicate your birthday or donate your birthday. I'm sure you heard it before. Other nonprofits do it. And I was like, my birthday was coming up. I'm going to donate my birthday to Peter in his orphanage. And I said, $800 will feed these kids for 3 months. Can you help me raise this money? The money was raised in 6 hours.
Nice.
So my next trip, I'm already planning. We stopped by the third trip. I'm over there, and I have these bags of rice on top of on top of the car. And I'm filming all this because I want people to see what they're doing for Peter, my buddy Peter, and all his orphanage friends. And we're pulling up this dirt road, and we get to the place, and everyone's cheering because they see the bag of food. And I'm like, yes, man, this is what it's about. And then I'm like, okay, I see mother, the mother of the orphanage. I see John. I see Sarah. I said, where's Peter? And I'm looking around, and I don't see Peter. And I asked the mother, I was like, Mother, where's Peter? And she kind of looks at me and very sorrow. And she said, Peter's dead. And I'm like, Peter's dead? Huh. What do you mean Peter's dead? And she said, yes, Peter caught infection, and he had no clinic, and he's dead. And that just as like 100 pounds of bricks just piling on me. And I just cut my camera off, and I kind of just got back in the car. And even though all the other kids didn't understand or why I was upset or why I was sad, because they were just excited. They see this stuff all the time. It was just life to them.
It's like normal to them. Wow.
Yeah, and I thought about my children and just getting an infection and just dying because they couldn't get anywhere. And I was like, this just didn't make sense. And so I got home, and I told Allie as soon as I got home, I said, I think God wants us to go to Liberia, because I really felt called after that situation. I said, not to say that I'm some kind of savior for these kids or anything like that, but I could be helpful over there. I think we could be a lot more helpful if we plant some roots over there. I've been wanting to develop a sponsorship program over there, and it just doesn't get done in 2 weeks' time. And after that, I missed my family. After 2 weeks, I missed my family so greatly. I don't want to spend any more time over there by myself. And she said no. At first, she politely looked down at her growing belly that held our third son, and she just said no. And so I just let it sit for about 6 months or so. And after my fourth trip, we talked about it some more after our third child was here, and he was growing and getting older, and she had this vivid dream that she was supposed to go as well. And that sounds cliche. It sounds weird, but we've been at it ever since. She said, let's do this. And it's been a year of discerning and planning. And now, heck, we're a couple months away, not even a couple months away from our departure. So we're heading out in January, and the plan is to take the family and just plant some roots for a year and just give back what God so graciously gave us.
Yeah, dude, that's it's amazing, dude. And crazy how things lined up the way that they did with your, you selling your company and then them selling the company and then you getting the job, going to Liberia, everything had to line up perfectly to come to where you're at today.
Yeah.
Now you said you're going to go in January. So does that mean for are you guys leaving everything behind in Cartersville and you're taking the family over there? Where do you guys live when you go over there? Like what does everyday life look like when you're there? Or at least what you know as of right now, like logistically, just like the normal things.
Yeah, Liberia is man, it's a complicated place. We'll be living in Monrovia, which is the capital city, for several reasons. One is because it's the only place that has electricity running through it just about, but it's not operated off a generator. Only 5% of the entire country is hooked up to have electricity that's not operated on a generator. And then able to do my job, I need Wi-Fi, I need constant electrical current. So we're going to be in the city. And my children will have a place to actually, we found a school, a little school that they can attend, a little international school.
Yeah.
It's like a daycare that they'll be able to go to that's only a few miles away from where we'll be staying. But we'll be in a small apartment complex in the city. And the thing that's going to hurt us the most is I married into a beautiful family. God knew I needed what I got out of them, what I do get out of them every day. And they live literally a stone's throw away from where we live right now. So my children, they see their grandparents and their cousins and their sisters every single day. My sister-in-law has twins as well that are only a year and a half old. So all of our kids are around the same age and they all hang out every day. So that's the biggest thing that's going to hurt me, is thinking that I'm hurting them by taking them away.
Yeah.
And it's not like, what we're granted here is, heck, you can see right now I'm sitting outside. It's a beautiful day. I can go to the 3 or 4 parks that are surrounding in a 10-mile radius. I can go hike the mountain with my children. I can go play baseball. Those things aren't going to be possible in Monrovia without certain, precaution. Because of malaria, because of all these things, even though we'll be on medication, because of when you're the haves in a world of have-nots, you just draw a lot of attention, especially being, taller, wider people. I have missionary friends living over there, and they just tell me the stories. Like, you can't go anywhere in public. It's like almost being famous, but in a bad way. Like, it's just, it's not good. So to be normal, me and my wife will just have to be extremely cautious of, again, like I said, what we talked about earlier about our kids watch our every move. And that's the biggest thing is making this discernment and processing this. I have friends that are over there, and I asked them, I was like, what do you suggest for, transitioning my kids over here? What are they going to feel like? What are they going to do? What should I look out for? And they said, look, your kids are going to adjust quicker than you. The thing is that you have to act like everything's normal, and they're going to act exactly the same way they do right here. Yeah. And so that was big for me to know. So me and my wife, as soon as I actually took her on my most recent trip to 100% get approval that this was doable for her, and she could mentally prepare and physically prepare, and took her where we would be living, and she was at peace with everything. But what we got out of that trip when we got back was that we're going to have to feed ourselves spiritually together as a couple. And that's something I lacked at before that trip. Is having a relationship with my wife. And that's what as alcoholics, like, sometimes we forget, especially if our spouse is not a recovering alcoholic, that they're in this thing with you. They always have been. So they deserve to be, a part of it at some level. I'm not saying you have to let them all the way in to your inventory or anything, but they have to be a part of your spiritual walk, or it's not going to be 100% full. You're not going to get the fruits out of it. And man, it was simple. Just adding a devotion every night when we go to bed. When I put my kids down when we put our kids down together, we wait a few minutes, then we break out a devotional. We talk about something spiritual. We talk about the day, and then we pray together. And it was the first time I prayed out loud with my wife, and it was like this huge relief just came off my shoulders. Yeah, and we've been doing it ever since. And we've been feeding each other spiritually ever since. And so that's going to be the key. Me and my wife staying strong and spiritually fit as a couple is going to be the key to my kids' success and our success over there next year. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I'm blown away, bro. I mean, I'm just going to say it, the balls that it takes, the faith that it takes, you know, the positivity, not to mention all of the logistical stuff I'm sure that goes into something like this. And all in the need and the want to serve others and help provide kids with a better life and some opportunity, man. I just admire the heck out of it, man. And I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. And then of course, the work that you and your family are about to go into in January. And I wish you guys the best. And I know Jess and I will definitely be praying for you guys, and we'll be thinking about you. And I definitely want to keep in touch over the next couple of months too. Where I know you guys have a website. If anyone wants to go check that out to get more information about how they could help out with your guys' trip, where could they do that, Zach?
Yeah. So we made a website which is called bestversionliberia.com, and that's named after our project's going to be the Best Version Project. And what we're going to be doing is just develop a sponsorship program for the kids we already serve over there. And it's just going to allow me to get a little more in depth and get to know their stories better and kind of bring them to the donors and give them a personal access to that. So these kids are the future of their country, and all they need is a little help, a little assistance. We're not trying to be Band-Aids or take full control. We want to give them the tools that they need to lead their country. So it's a beautiful thing. So, and I appreciate you having me on here to kind of talk about it and talk about my recovery, because hey, without me getting sober 6 years ago, none of this is happening. This is not, I was literally rubbing smoke off of furniture at a fire restoration company, counting down the hours. Not to say if anyone's out there that does that, not to say nothing's wrong with that, but I was doing nothing at the moment. So, this life's a beautiful life, man. If we'll just wake up and say yes to it and just go with it.
Yeah, good stuff, my brother. I appreciate you, man. And we'll be sure to put the links in the show notes. So if anyone out there listening, if you want to check that out, you can go to thatsoberguy.com and you can find those links there. Zach, dude, thanks again, man. And we'll keep in touch, man.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. Once again, if you want any more information, you can go to thatsoberguy.com. Connect with us on Instagram at @realthatsoberguy and at Shane Raymer on Twitter. Peace, love, and respect. Keep your blood clean.